We like to think we're in the driver's seat of our lives, that our choices are products of logic, ambition, and free will. But for most of us, that's a carefully constructed illusion. In reality, our brains have been hijacked by a primitive chemical messenger that doesn't care about your long-term happiness, your bank account, or your relationships. It only cares about the next hit. Dopamine was originally designed to keep us alive. It was the fuel that drove our ancestors to find water, hunt prey, and survive the winter. But in our modern world, this survival mechanism has been weaponized against us. Whether it's the food you crave, the way you work, or the people you date, you might be trapped in a neurochemical loop you didn't even know existed. Today, we are deconstructing the 12 types of dopamine addiction that are secretly running your life. Welcome to the lab. 1. Dopamine. Spike, the fast hit. Substances like nicotine or stimulants offer a cheat code to the brain's reward center. They flood your synapses with dopamine instantly, creating a feeling of artificial power or focus. But the brain is an adaptive machine. When it's flooded with an unnatural amount of stimulation, it begins a process called downregulation. It literally shuts down its own receptors to prevent burnout. This is the tolerance trap. Soon, you aren't using the substance to feel high. You're using it just to achieve a baseline of not empty. You've traded your natural joy for a chemical lease. 2. Comfort numbing, the chemical blanket. While stimulants create spikes, substances like alcohol or opioids create a chemical blanket. They quiet the noise of the world by boosting GABA, your brain's primary inhibitory neurotransmitter. This creates a deceptive sense of peace. However, the brain seeks homeostasis. When the sedative wears off, your stress systems, like the fight or flight response, fire back twice as hard to compensate. This leads to the rebound effect, where you end up using just to stop the overwhelming panic and anxiety that the last dose actually created. 3. Predictive rewards. The you maybe win. This is the psychology behind gambling and loot boxes. Your brain doesn't actually release the most dopamine when you win. It releases it when there is a chance you might win. This is known as the variable reward schedule. By making the reward unpredictable, the brain stays in a state of high alert seeking. A near miss is interpreted by your survival circuitry not as a loss, but as progress. This tricks you into thinking the next spin, the next pack, or the next hand is the one that will finally pay off the debt. 4. Validation addiction, the digital mirror. Social media has turned human self-worth into a quantifiable metric. Every like, heart, or comment triggers a microburst of dopamine. But because these hits are unpredictable and public, they create a digital mirror effect. You begin to outsource your internal sense of value to an invisible audience. Eventually, you stop living your life for the experience and start performing it for the algorithm. Your happiness is no longer yours. It belongs to strangers and lines of code. 5. Novelty. Chasing the infinite swipe. Evolution programmed us to be curious. Exploration meant finding new resources. Dating apps and adult content exploit this novelty-seeking drive. By offering an infinite scroll of new faces and scenarios with zero physical effort, they fatigue your dopamine receptors. This creates a supernormal stimulus. Real-world intimacy begins to feel mundane or boring because it cannot compete with the hyper-engineered, concentrated stimulation of 1,000 digital options. 6. Productivity. Addiction, the hustle trap. This is the addiction society rewards. By mixing dopamine, the hit of achievement, with cortisol, the stress of the deadline, hustle culture creates a state of high-functioning mania. You feel vital, important, and indispensable. But eventually, your nervous system loses the off switch. Relaxation begins to feel like a threat, like you're falling behind. Your identity becomes entirely fused with a never-ending to-do list, leaving you successful on paper but spiritually and physically bankrupt. 7. Food and sugar, the bliss point. The food industry doesn't just make snacks, they engineer craveability. They aim for the bliss point, a precise ratio of salt, sugar, and fat that bypasses your stomach's full signals and goes straight to the brain's reward center. These foods trigger a massive insulin spike followed by a crash, which the brain interprets as a survival emergency. Even if you've just eaten a 1,000-calorie meal, your brain sends out a signal for a specific hit, keeping you in a cycle of metabolic chaos. 8. Shopping and spending. The thrill of the hunt. Modern shopping, especially online, isn't about the product, it's about the hunt. The dopamine peak occurs during the search, the comparison, and the final click of the purchase. The moment the package actually arrives at your door, the chemical high vanishes. This is why so many of us have unopened boxes or clothes with tags still on them. We weren't buying a product. We were buying the feeling of a win, forcing us to find the next item just to feel that Christmas morning rush again. 9. Relationship addiction, the toxic magnet. In psychology, we often see people who mistake high anxiety for high passion. In unstable or push-pull relationships, affection is given inconsistently. This mirrors the gambling mechanics we discussed earlier. You become addicted to the intermittent reinforcement, the sudden relief of a reconciliation after a massive fight. This trains your brain to find healthy, stable connections dull, while it unconsciously seeks out drama just to feel the intoxicating high of the makeup. 10. Anger and conflict. The outrage. High. Anger is a powerful biological stimulant. When you feel righteous indignation, your body releases adrenaline and cortisol, making you feel sharp, focused, and purposeful. In a world where many feel powerless, rage-bait news and social media arguments provide an easy sense of agency. You seek out conflict not to solve it, but to feel the surge of energy it provides. Eventually, peace starts to feel like apathy, and you become a conflict junkie, unable to function without an enemy. 11. Pain and struggle. The chaos loop. If you grew up in an environment of instability, your brain's baseline for normal is high stress. This is called familiarity bias. To your nervous system, calm feels like the terrifying silence before a storm. Consequently, when things are going well, you might unconsciously sabotage your job, your finances, or your relationships. You are creating a crisis just to return to the high cortisol state your brain recognizes as home. You aren't self-destructive, you're just trying to find a familiar frequency. 12. Information addiction. The digital noise. The constant need to be plugged in, checking headlines, trivia, and updates, erodes your ability to think deeply. Every new fact gives a micro hit of dopamine, but it's shallow learning. This constant consumption blocks your default mode network, the part of the brain where creativity, long-term planning, and self-reflection live. You are so busy consuming the thoughts of others that you've lost the ability to generate your own. Your mind has become a crowded room with no windows. Recognizing these 12 loops isn't about guilt. It's about regaining your autonomy. We aren't broken. We are simply biological entities living in a world that was designed to exploit our deepest instincts. The goal isn't to live a life without dopamine. That would be a life without motivation or joy. The goal is to reclaim your hits for the things that actually build a life worth living: deep work, real connection, and genuine growth. Which of these 12 loops felt like it was written specifically for you? Let's talk about it in the comments. If this breakdown gave you a new perspective on your own mind, hit the like button and subscribe to the lab. We have a lot more to deconstruct. I'm the Sketch Professor, and the lecture is adjourned.